Good morning, viewers. Today we're talking to Clare Reilly from Clare Reilly. Tell us a bit about your story, Clare, and your journey.
Yeah, well, I think, our story is always a really big question, isn't it? I suppose in terms of who I am now, my story sort of starts in 2017. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in April 2017. And I mean, that's a shock for anyone at any stage. My background was in outdoor education, so I actually led bushwalks for a living. So getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and having difficulty walking was a pretty big kind of impact on my life. And I was diagnosed in April, and then my husband and I and our, at the time, 2-year-old son went to move to Gippsland and ran an outdoor education centre. So for a couple of years, I just ignored my diagnosis. We were in charge. We had 5 to 7 staff, depending on the year. We had 32 programs running over the year. So Monday to Friday, students would come in, and we were there for 2.5 years. It was completely off the grid, on land. So we had sheep and chickens and a veggie garden that's bigger than our house that we now live in. And I was struggling to walk because of my MS. And when we moved home at the end of our contract, we live in Port Arlington, and I realised that my MS wasn't going anywhere. And that's when I really, I suppose, got deep into grief and really grieving the life that I'd lost, losing the ability to kind of work in those outdoor situations and that sort of thing. And after about 12 months of working pretty hard on myself, seeing a therapist and physiotherapist and myotherapist and exercise physiologist and doing a lot of work, I realised that I could help others who were in a similar position to me. So I started a podcast called MS Understood, and I'm actually about to release the 52nd episode. So I release an episode a week. That's about to be released next week. And I've just released the first round of my course, and it's full actually of my course called Magnificent Self, where I help women who are in positions just like me rediscover who they are after a diagnosis. So yeah, that's my story.
That sounds great. How did you, when that mindset had to turn around, because you're a very active person, you could no longer be active. How did you switch that around?
Yeah, it was really tricky, and for a long time I cried a lot and I yelled at mostly my family members, and saw a really good therapist. So I went, we're really lucky to have access to funded psychologists through Medicare, and I utilised that and found a really good therapist who gave me a lot of tools as to how I can manage when I'm in kind of that grief state. But it was really just accepting that it wasn't going anywhere and working out the things that I could do now, rather than focusing on the things that I'd lost or the things that I could no longer do.
Great. And how, with regards to working with your customers, clients, how do you help them through those processes yourself?
Yeah, so I've created a course where we look at sort of rediscovering who you are or who we are post-diagnosis. And that is through a lot of those things of what times of the day do I work best in, or what are those things that I still do or I still can do, or how can I find a better way of doing something that can be more effective for me now that there are things that I struggle to do. So it's really about owning the positive elements. And I've spoken a lot, I think, through my podcast. One of the questions I always ask my guests who I interview, who have at this stage have all had multiple sclerosis, I ask about what the best thing to have come out of their diagnosis is, because there always needs to be some kind of light at the end of that really dark grief tunnel that we go through.
Yeah, I think it's an important positive aspect of that change in your life, that you have lost control of something, but you can gain control of something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've spoken to a few people. Well, one particular person that also has MS, and she's got a very positive, Justine Martin, and she's got a very, very positive outlook on life now. And it can become an obstacle, but anything that we come across can become an obstacle. But there's always something we can do to make it into a much more positive experience for all of us, for all of us.
Yeah, I think
Whatever we might go through, whatever. I mean, I think that applies to life, really, doesn't it?
That's right. And I think that's where a lot of people get really hung up on, but I've been diagnosed with MS. And you look around, and after I got diagnosed with MS, and after I kind of came out quite publicly, I kept it quiet for a couple of years. But after I came out quite publicly on my Instagram account with having had multiple sclerosis, so many people that I knew kind of came out of the woodworks. There was, other diagnoses or other autoimmune diseases or other things that people were grieving that people then felt more confident or comfortable talking to me about because they knew that I had also been through something similar. But I think really, like, having now lived with this diagnosis and talked with a lot of people in the similar position for me for 4 years now, or over 4 years, is that everyone's going through something. And given, I think particularly with the pandemic for the last 18 months, is that we really have to live, regardless of the diagnosis we're given, we really need to live as if every day, well, my mum now says, as if every day we could be going into lockdown. Because why not go out for lunch today? Or why not go out for dinner on a Tuesday? Or why not take that holiday or visit a friend? Because we just don't know. And that could be a pandemic, it could be a lockdown, it could be a diagnosis, it could be a death. Like, there's always something that people are living through.
Do you think that the important message is that something that you think has power over you, you can take some of that power back?
Yeah, definitely. It's always tricky with a diagnosis like this. So for me, walking is my main difficulty. And like I said, I used to run hikes or lead hikes for a living. And that has been a really difficult thing to grieve. And not just for me, but for my whole family. It's something that we would do together. But the things that I can do now and the mindset that I'm able to be in now, and I think the doors that have opened because I've moved on, and not moved on, I'd love to be able to go hiking, but realize that that's not something that's in my present right now, and given myself the opportunity to look at other things and meet new people, I suppose it's opened different doors rather than closing them necessarily.
Well, think about the changes you can make in other people's lives as well. I mean, that's empowering in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, and definitely I've seen that through the podcast. It's been an incredible 12 months of interviewing, like I said, people with MS from all over the world. And that might be, I was incredibly lucky and honoured to be able to speak with Tim Ferguson, who was a member of the Doug Anthony All-Stars, and he was diagnosed. And I had to essentially tell the whole world of what he was going through. I've spoken with people who live in wheelchairs, people who have no symptoms at all, people who walk 10 kilometres a day just to go for a stroll. And I think that the key thing that has come out of all of that is the positive elements. And it's really about the mindset change that we've all had, I think. And I really notice that through the messages that I get on Instagram from people who are listening, but also the guests, from once they're able to tell their story. I think it's a really freeing thing to be able to really own what you're going through.
Let's rewind a little bit. You mentioned that you lived in Gippsland. You had a property in Gippsland.
Yeah, no. So we actually moved up there to run an outdoor education centre, a privately owned outdoor education centre. Yep.
How long were you up there for?
2.5 years. So I had actually worked at I'd been to the camp when I was 16. I'd worked there for 12 months when I was 18, and it was my dream job to direct there one day, which is, I suppose we were the managers, my husband and I. So we got to take our son there and spend 2.5 years living there.
Right. So what's your connection? What's your connection with Geelong then? Are you born and bred in Geelong, or did you move here from somewhere else? Or
Yeah, born and bred. So I grew up on the corner of Packington Street and Noble Street,
wow.
And my house now that I grew up in is actually the doctor's surgery, the Newtown Clinic. So I weirdly had blood drawn in my sister's bedroom when I was pregnant with my son. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
So we could hear the footy sirens from our backyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Good, so I moved away for 10 years or so, and then we ended up back in Port Arlington.
Okay. Cool. What's it like? What's life like down in Port Arlington?
It's pretty nice. It's a beautiful community. I head down to the beach every morning and jump in the water at sunrise, which is my kind of new ritual. I've started since the deep, dark depths of winter. It's really lovely being able to live here, and the school community is really nice, and the area. I mean, it's been a beautiful place to be for the last couple of years, particularly, but it's always been really nice.
Describe your typical day with regards to working with your clients?
Yeah, right. So typical day, I suppose, is working with clients needs to start after school. So in the morning I jump in the bay, come home, get my son ready for school, and he heads off. It can be, my days generally aren't particularly typical day to day, but things that I might be doing would be client one-on-one calls, or some behind the scenes work of organising programs or editing podcasts or podcast interviews or things like this. But a big part of my life and a big part of my days are also medical appointments and therapy appointments to support my the symptoms of the MS that I live with. So, yeah.
Can you, without going into too much detail, can you describe what living like with MS is?
Yeah, I think something that I've really learnt over the last 12 months of doing the podcast, MS Understood, is that everyone's days are so different, but MS is so different from person to person. But for me, I'll often struggle to get out of bed in the morning, so it's walking. I'm quite stiff. Once I get into the cold water, so cold water therapy has been really great for my mobility. Once I get into the water, I'm usually feeling a bit smoother and kind of eased things out a little bit. And then I'm super early to bed. So during the day, like I said, there's probably a physiotherapy appointment. I've got one this afternoon, or an appointment I had a nutritionist appointment this morning. So that's 2 medical appointments today. And then I'm super early, so I usually zonk out by the time I suppose I've spent the day walking around, my legs are aching or just not quite as coordinated as I want them to be. And then I'm usually flat out on the couch at 7 o'clock after putting my son to bed, and I'm in bed pretty early, so I'm at 8:30 to bed kind of girl.
Fair enough. I think it's important that we all recognise and understand what people go through day to day with regards to, they might run their business, but we've all got underlying issues or health problems and all that sort of stuff. That's just a normal part of life, I think.
Yeah.
And we don't know by looking at someone what their health issues are. We might make assumptions, but we probably shouldn't make those assumptions. And there's also the idea of demystifying and destigmatising certain conditions, like even mental health conditions and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's important. It's an important subject to talk about, and not sweep it under the carpet, sort of thing. And I'm fascinated with regards to finding out more about the nitty-gritties of people's lives with regards to who they really are. With regards to their business owners, we chat to them day to day, but I think these sorts of interviews give us a little bit more insight to the person behind the screen, sort of thing. And I'm really loving presenting this sort of thing to people who probably most likely would never have met you and other people that I interview, and it just makes that connection a little bit more personal. And I've got just one last question for you with regards to the devastation of finding out that you had MS. Leading up to your diagnosis, what was happening to you in your life? What was happening to your body?
Yeah, right. So for me, the issue that I suppose that raised my diagnosis, the reason that I got diagnosed,
your concern,
was that I had lower back pain, and it was so debilitating. I was often I would spend the day lying on the kitchen floor because I couldn't get up. My back was so sore. I'd had to call my parents to come around and look after my son. I was seeing a physio, and she said she'd never seen anything like it. And I had this one day, I recall it so vividly, where I was out and we'd been gardening, and I was straight-legged and bent at the waist, so kind of at a bent right angle. And I was washing my hands and I couldn't get up. I just was going, my top half was just going lower and lower, and eventually I kind of slumped to the ground. And I turned to my husband and had absolutely no reason to think this, but said to him, "What if it's MS?" And then finally I went to a GP and he sent me to a neurologist. And then the neurologist confirmed, well, firstly he said to me I'd either had a brain tumour or MS, and then I waited 6 weeks for my results, which was pretty rough.
It would have been.
Yeah. So weirdly I was praying for a benign brain tumour, but got MS. And so, I think it's really tricky. I mean, I've spoken with so many people about different ways that they've been diagnosed. And so for me it was the lower back pain.
What made you think, like, you're telling your husband, what if it's MS? What made you think that?
I have
Did you know anything about MS before that?
No, nothing. All I knew, and all a lot of people know about, is the MS readathon that we had at school when we were kids. I knew nothing about it, but for some reason that was the thought that went through my brain. Yeah.
Oh. Premonition.
Yeah.
Bad one. Yeah. Now, finally, we'll talk. Tell us about your services, how people can contact you. So you're basically giving your business a bit of a spruik here.
Plug.
Yeah, a bit of a plug. Yeah.
Well, mostly my favourite way of communicating and contacting, I suppose, people is on Instagram. So people can find me at Clare, and it's CLARE .Reilly, REILLY. I have to spell both of those forever. And the product, I know they're like the weird Clare and Reilly.
I think I got it wrong.
No. I think, it doesn't matter. It's just so people can find me if they want to.
Yeah.
I host a podcast. It's a weekly episodes talking about multiple sclerosis. I'm actually introducing episodes with professionals who can help those living with MS in a couple of weeks. So you can find MS Understood on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So just search MS Understood. And the program that I'm honoured to be able to offer women with chronic illnesses or newly diagnosed with chronic illnesses is Magnificent Self. And at the moment that's sold out, but it will be re-released in February 2022. So if people are interested, I suppose find me on Instagram, and then you'll be able to see when that's launched again next. And that program is really to rediscover who you are post that diagnosis and really be able to find that self-love again after kind of that discombobulating time of getting a diagnosis and really kind of reclaiming who you are.
Fantastic. Thank you, Clare. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we hope to hear more about you in the future. So, thank you for joining us, and thank you, viewers, for listening in. Talk to you soon, Clare.
All right.
We'll end the broadcast now.